Oh no! It's another stereotypical bouncing ball animation lesson. Or is it? Hey, welcome back to Little Green Dog's animation tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to animate a bouncing ball. Or more accurately, we'll get Moho to do the work for us, using its built-in physics engine. Ready? Let's go! The version of Moho we'll be using is 14.3. First, let's set the range of the project to 240 frames. Do this by typing 240 inside the End Frame box. I'll use the Shapes tool to draw a rectangle at the bottom. Let's color it Asphalt Gray. Let's give the layer a name. I'm going to call it Groundy. It's a good habit to name the layers as you create them. Now let's create a new layer and call it Bally. Select the circle option, and while pressing Shift-Alt, I'll draw a circle in the center of the screen. Color it red. Let's make it more interesting by adding shading. Select the Transform Layer tool and move the ball to about here. Select both layers and group them. I'm going to call the group Bouncy. The name really doesn't matter. You can call it Mommy if you find that comforting. Now, double-click the group to open the layer properties. Click on the Physics tab and enable Physics. This enables Moho's physics engine for everything inside this group. This dial represents the gravity direction, and for this lesson, it should point to the ground, kind of like it does on planet Earth. Now, to apply the settings, that's right, click Apply. Now select the ground layer and set it to Non-Moving Object. This turns the artwork into a static collision object. Click Apply. Select the ball layer. The settings we're interested in are these three. Density affects the responsiveness of an object, which is how sensitive the object is in reacting to other objects. A higher value makes the object more responsive. Friction sets how rough or how smooth the edge is. And no, I'm not on drugs, just having fun. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Springiness affects the bounciness of an object, with 1 being maximum springy. Let's see what the default settings do. Oh, it looks like I made a bowling ball, but I want to play with a basketball. So I'm going to increase the springiness to 1, which is the maximum setting. When I make settings changes and I don't know exactly what the numbers will do, I'll enter a high number, check the result, and then either divide in half or double that number to get closer to the result I want. This is a good way to learn how a tool works, and it's more effective than punching in random numbers. But before I make changes in the physics panel, I'm going to press Shift left arrow to send the playhead to frame 0. This will ensure I'm not unintentionally keyframing settings in the middle of the animation. Remember this because it can really mess things up if you're not careful. Now that we're on frame 0, I'll enter 1 for springiness and click Apply. Okay, let's see what we got. I'll press the spacebar to play the animation. Yeah, that's more like it. Whoa! Let's fix that. What happened is that the ball has a slight roughness in its edge, which affects the angle of the bounce. We can make the edge extra smooth by reducing the friction to 0. Press Shift left arrow to reset the playhead, enter 0 for friction, and click Apply. Now press the spacebar to play. Ooh, look! We have a bouncing ball! If the animation is playing too fast on your computer, Look under the animation menu and make sure Allow Frame Skipping is turned off. This option helps when you want to play a very complicated setup and it's playing too slowly. But most of the time, it should be switched off. When you need to check the accuracy of the playback speed, go to File, Preview Animation. This will quickly render a low-quality movie that plays at the correct frame rate. Now, if we wanted the ball to actually bounce slowly, as if it were on the moon, or filled with a light gas, we could reduce the gravity setting. You can play with that later. For now, I'll continue with these settings. Okay, let's run the simulation. To do this, press Shift left arrow to reset the playhead. Then click OK to close the physics window. When we press play now, Moho will generate keyframes for the entire timeline. After the simulation is played through once, stop the playback and reset the playhead. Now let's disable the physics engine. Because we have baked keyframes for the animation, the physics engine is no longer needed. To do this, double-click the Bouncy group, select the Physics tab, and uncheck Enable Physics. Press Apply and then OK to accept the setting and close the window. When we select the Bally layer, we can see the animation keyframes there, and they run for the entire 240 frames. Here's an important note. If we hadn't pressed Shift left arrow to reset the playhead, Moho would have created a keyframe to disable physics on a later frame, and it would continue to calculate physics up to that frame. So when the physics engine is no longer required, be sure to disable it at frame 0. Just something to pay attention to when using this feature. Let's play this again to check the keyframes. Now, you may have noticed that the shading on the ball looks a bit funky. This is a GPU caching error. When I stop the animation and render a preview, you can see the shading is actually correct. So, because this caching error doesn't affect the final render quality, we could just ignore it. But I find it a bit distracting, so I'm going to fix it by going to the display options and unchecking GPU caching. I'd like this bounce to look more cartoony, so I'm going to add a squash and stretch effect. Moho Physics can't do this, so I'm adding the effect manually. I also want to turn this animation into a short cycle and delete most of these keyframes. This way, I only need to do the squash and stretch animation once. To begin, I'm going to scrub through the first bounce, find its peak, and select the next frame. Then I'll right-click over this keyframe in the Transform channel and choose Select Keys to Right, which selects all the keys to the right of the frame. Then I'll press Delete. Now, right-click over the keyframe in the Rotate channel, choose Select Keys to Right, and press Delete. This leaves us with keyframes for one complete bounce. I'll select the first keyframes of both channels and paste them into the last frame. This ensures that the end of our cycle matches the beginning. Now I'll choose the last keyframe in both channels, right-click, and choose the interpolation mode called Cycle. This tells Moho to cycle our animation from this frame of the bounce to the second frame. We don't normally want it to cycle to the first frame, because that will play the same image for 2 frames. If we need to make an adjustment to the cycle, we can change the start frame here in the keyframe window. But for our purpose right now, the second frame is exactly what we want. Let's play this. And we have a perfectly looping ball bounce. This will continue bouncing forever, until we add another keyframe and change the animation later in the timeline. But we're not going to do that here. Press the space bar to stop and Shift left arrow to reset the playhead. The ball isn't quite touching the ground, so let's fix that. Reset the playhead and create a group for the Bally layer. I'll name this group Offset because I can use it to offset the ball's position without affecting its animation keyframes. Okay, let's find that contact frame. Here it is. Select the Transform Layer tool and move the ball so it touches the ground. Perfect. Cut the keyframe we just created and paste it into frame 0. Cool. Now let's add that squash and stretch effect. To do this, I'm going to animate the points of the ball inside the vector layer. First, let's go to the contact frame and step one frame back, which is just before the ball touches the ground. Select the Bally layer, then select all the points. I'm going to click the Freeze Visible Points /Bones button. This sets a keyframe for everything visible in the current layer. In this case, the keyframe holds the circle shape of the ball. Step forward one frame to the contact pose. Here, we're going to squash the ball. Choose the Transform Points tool, press and hold Shift, and push this top middle handle downward. Notice how holding Shift doesn't just scale the selection, but it affects the volume. In other words, it squashes and stretches it. The sides of the ball look too rounded, so let's reduce the roundness by selecting the side points and using the Curvature tool to sharpen them a little. That looks good. Wait a minute, does a circle have sides? Step forward one frame. Here, I'm going to stretch the ball. First, I'll copy the circle keyframe created earlier and paste it here. Then I'll select all the points, and using Transform Points with Shift and Alt, I'll stretch the ball. Shift and Alt together will squash and stretch the selection from the center of the widget. Select the top and bottom points, and use Curvature to sharpen them a little. Go to the last frame of our cycle, copy that circle keyframe, and paste it here. Oh, I almost forgot. I also need to copy and paste the circle keyframe to the beginning of the animation. This defines the first frame of our cycle. Now select the last keyframe, right-click, and choose Cycle. Remember, Cycle starts with the second frame by default, so the animation can loop seamlessly. Let's see what we've got now. I'll reset the playhead and press play. And what we've got is a forever bouncing ball with a smooth squash and stretch effect. Yay! If you'd like to look at my Moho project file to check your work, you can download it for free. And when you're done, take what you learned to the next level by animating this BONUS Catsketball project. I've included notes in the file to help you along. To download these files, just follow the link in the video description below. Now that you have some basic knowledge of working with Moho Physics, go create something wacky. Maybe something like this. If you enjoy these tutorials, find them helpful, and can't wait to get the next one, visit my Ko-fi page using this QR code or clicking the link in the video description. On the Little Green Dog Ko-fi page, you'll find behind-the-scenes content and announcements for upcoming tutorials and projects. Become a supporter, see your name in the credits, and get free stuff. Ko-fi supporters help make these tutorials and cartoons possible. Right now, we're out of time, but we'll have more fun with Moho Physics in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you soon.